me this evening. We're from Tilma Group, and we are regional tourism specialists based in southern Queensland in Toowoomba, but we work on a lot of different projects across regional and rural Australia. We also have representatives here from Destination Central West. We've got Sean Halen. Each of these people will be presenting for you this evening. We've got Jill from RedGround Australia, another fabulous agritourism operator. We have got Jacqueline. Yes. Yep, Jacqueline, fantastic. We've had a couple of issues with Jacqueline and technology. She wasn't sure if she'd be able to join us, so fantastic. Jacqueline is from Burns Planning and Development, and will talk to us tonight about the planning processes and getting you thinking about some things and some questions that you need to ask. And we've also got Kate joining us from Nutrien Ag Solutions to also share some insights into some considerations around insurance for those looking to diversify into agritourism. Now, we've got a fair bit to cover. We've got an hour. I'll certainly be keeping track of time. But if any questions come up for you, please at any point just drop them into the chat box. I'm just conscious we may not have a lot of time at the end for questions. So pop them into the chat box. And all of our presenters, if you can just keep an eye on that as well. And if there's anything for you to address in the moment, then absolutely please do that. And also, if I could just ask maybe our presenters, if you want to jump in and just introduce yourself in the chat as well, that might save us a little bit of time as we transition through each of us this evening. All right. I think that's all of our little bit of housekeeping. Actually, I should just say there is also an apology from one of our presenters this evening. He's had a last minute emergency with a client, and that is Andrew that was joining us, our legal representative. But I will share with you at the end a link and you can jump in, and we've got some key takeouts and some insights from Andrew for you to consider as well from a tax and a succession planning perspective. So lots for you to take in tonight. And we've got a recording as well, so you'll also receive that recording. Anyway, strap yourselves in. I'm going to kick us off tonight. And I'm going to share a little bit around what is agritourism and just get you thinking about the opportunities in agritourism. And then my friend Sean from Destination Central West will just expand on that and give some further insights from a tourism and destination perspective as well. All right. What is agritourism? You know what? It'd be really cool if others could just jump into the chat, because obviously based on this particular topic, we're talking about, is agritourism the right diversification option for my farm? So that kind of suggests that we're probably talking to people that are not yet in agritourism, or perhaps are in the early stages of exploring in agritourism, but that's an assumption. So I'd really love if people could jump into the chat box and maybe just share a little bit about where you're at in your journey in agritourism. So what is agritourism? As you can see on the screen right now, it is an on-farm tourism experience. It's any experience on farm that connects guests to farmers and to their produce and farming activities. One thing I want to make really clear is that the purpose of agritourism is not to replace agriculture. It's actually about supplementing the income on your farm. It's about supporting farm viability and resilience. It's about looking at opportunities to extend the agricultural operations on your farm to provide opportunities for guests to learn and be immersed in that experience. It can be things like providing a pathway to market. It can be value adding to your produce. So it absolutely has a connection to your farming operations and to the produce and farm activities that currently exist. When we look at agritourism, we tend to look at three key elements of agritourism. Firstly, it is an experience that is delivered on a farm. And it includes both engagement with the people, so interaction with yourselves as farmers, and also engagement with the product or the produce, so the interaction with the produce. Now, we do often see, when I say it on a commercial farm is an element of agritourism, we often get people say to us, well, what about if it's, a farmer's market, or we've got a restaurant within a regional town that sells local produce? We call those definitely agritourism experiences, and they're part of that agritourism ecosystem. But in terms of a formal definition of agritourism, these are what we consider the elements of agritourism, and absolutely that desire of guests to actually get on the farm and connect with the farmer and the produce. So there's all different types of agritourism experiences, and this is where it gets really exciting. And remember as well, it's not just about when you're thinking about tourism or agritourism and that diversification opportunity for your farm, it's not that you just need to think of one of these things. What we often find with successful agritourism operators is they start small and they start with something that could be perhaps a tour, and then they start to add to that over time. And perhaps once they get a little bit more comfortable, they might invest more into tourism. So as you can see here on the screen, there's a variety of different agritourism experiences that you could consider for your farm. And the thing that you need to remember as well is not only is it important to consider, is agritourism right for my farm, but you also have to consider the assets that you have. What's the location of your farm? What are the assets that exist on your farm at the moment? What's the landscape like? Because certain things will work better in certain environments and within certain landscapes than others. So always kind of finding that thing that's a really good fit for your farm. So we can consider things like farm stays, and a lot of us often will go straight to accommodation because it's the first thing a lot of us think of when we think, agritourism or tourism is on-farm accommodation. So we can have things like cabins, camping, glamping. We have produce experiences, so lots of fabulous things that exist around regional Australia around, pick your own experiences, tastings, cooking classes, cellar doors, etc. Then we have farm experiences. So these are things like farm tours, interactions with animals. We've got horse riding experiences, and then we've got events as well. So thinking about open days, meals, workshops, we see lots of, flower type farms or sunflower crops where the farmers will actually have open days or events where they actually have people come in and they'll have a big celebration that might celebrate the harvest or a particular moment within the season of their agricultural production. So lots of different types of agritourism experiences to consider. And I think the important thing for you to remember is it's not just you don't just have to pigeonhole yourself into one area. Often it's kind of finding a nice mix of things that can really add value to the farming operation and also to the guest experience. So start small, build as you go. Look, agritourism is a really hot topic at the moment. And there's a lot of interest in agritourism experiences. And if you haven't yet seen, we've just had a report released by Tourism Research Australia. And you can scan that little QR code that you can see on the screen right now, and it will take you to the report. So we have this is a really exciting step for us in the industry because it shows the recognition of agritourism across the country. So we've now got some data to build on that demonstrates the value and the importance of this sector within the tourism industry and also the agricultural industry. But a couple of interesting things that this report showed is that there's obviously great interest in agritourism, and agritourism travellers are seen as quite high value travellers. So they have a higher than average spend per trip. So they spend more, they stay longer, and they have higher visitation to regional Australia. And they actually do more when they go into regional Australia. So they're not real passive visitors. They're really active. They want to get involved. They want to do things. They want to spend money. So that's great. So we've got a high value market that we have the opportunity to build and develop experiences for. And that's really important for you to remember when you start to go down this journey is what is it that the market's looking for? Because often we find in our experience working with farmers is they don't really value the experiences and the knowledge that they have to share with guests. So think about that. You know, it's high value travelers. They want to learn, they want to engage, they want to connect with you and with your farm. Now, visitors want, these are a couple of really important things to remember. These are kind of non-negotiables. They want to feel safe. They want to connect with nature. They want to experience authenticity. So don't try to be something that you're not. And I think that's kind of easy for most farmers that are down to earth and, you know, quite, you know, interesting and insightful people. So really just that authenticity of an experience. Don't try to glam something up. Sometimes it's that grassroots, beautiful connection to nature and to the farmer that is really valuable to a guest. Yeah, connection with farmers. I'm always have a bit of a chuckle when we talk to farmers that have just maybe, you know, started on their journey in agritourism, and they go, oh my God, visitors, they ask so many questions. Like they want to know everything. And that's why we sometimes say, you know, agritourism is not for every farmer as well. You've got to be a little bit of a social character because, you know, guests do want that connection with a farmer and they want to ask questions. They're quite curious. And they also are really interested in sustainability. So they're also looking at those, you know, regenerative opportunities and particularly interested in supporting tourism experiences. And obviously that goes with agritourism as well, sustainable experiences. So some things that you just need to consider when you're going into agritourism. Now, look, Kushla just had the privilege, and Sean was there. No, Sean wasn't at ART. Sorry, Sean, you're like me. We missed out. Australian Regional Tourism Convention was just held in the Adelaide Hills in South Australia, and they have a National Agritourism Forum as part of that. It's a fantastic event held each year with lots of great representation from government and industry. And these were some of the insights that Kushla brought back from that particular forum. Once again, you've got a QR code on the screen. Kushla's written an article on her key takeouts from the day. So much more detail if you scan that QR code, and we'll share all of these links and everything with the recording. But make sure you jump in and have a look at that as well. But these were some of the things, and I've said a couple of things as I've been going, some of these as I've been going already, but start small. Don't try to become something really huge. And I want to just share a really recent experience that I had working with a farmer that demonstrates this. So this is a cattle farm, and he wanted to, first of all, he said, so I was working with him to kind of explore agritourism opportunities as a diversification option for him as a farmer. And straight away he says, I want to put accommodation down by the creek and I want to put in a wedding venue. He had an old kind of rustic shed. So that was that was the concept. He'd seen it in other places. He thought that would work really well on his farm. Now, after a couple of conversations with him, knowing that that's a big investment, right, to invest in accommodation, he was talking kind of cabin type accommodation and a wedding venue. So, you know, crunching numbers and looking at that, for someone that's never been in tourism, that's a big investment. And absolutely, he probably could make it work, but it's high risk. So when I had a few conversations with this particular farmer, what I quickly learned is that he was very passionate farmer that really wanted to connect the consumers with his product on the farm. So he just recently started selling direct to consumers his beef. And he had a local supermarket that was distributing his beef, and he'd set up an online shop. And this was new for him, and it was something he was really passionate about. So we actually went from starting a conversation around accommodation and a wedding venue to go, you know what, your core purpose really is to connect people with your beef and to build a loyal customer base for your beef products so that they continue to purchase your beef and are part of your story into the future. So I said, why don't we explore the opportunity of doing farm tours where they get to come on the farm? Because he was also very intelligent and really engaging. So his story was really just really mesmerizing. And so I said, you would be a fabulous tour guide. You know, and he even took us on a bit of a tour, and it was just amazing. So long story short, he went from being first interested in accommodation and weddings to now starting with farm tours, where he's going to connect, hopefully, his end loyal customers on the farm, which will be the start of his production line, essentially, in terms of his consumers. So he's really going to be building that confidence and loyal customer base, which will hopefully convert to long-term customers. So you can see how just by taking a little bit of time to think about it, understanding your end goal, you can actually start a little bit smaller and potentially build on it. So take the time to think through your concept and question it and get some advice from as many people as possible. Kushla thought this one was pretty funny, the sizzle. You've got to have the sausage, but also the sizzle. So really, you've got to think about what you're offering, and that's the sausage, but the sizzle is the stories. Like, become a storyteller. Like I said before, visitors or guests are really curious. So sometimes it's just your story that people want to invest in. So really think about, you can build a product, you can develop an experience, but the storytelling and the stories and your knowledge that you have to share is really valuable. Now, price to reflect your worth. So look, we see this all the time. Make sure that as a farmer, you really value your time and you value your knowledge and experience. And that's essentially what people are paying for. It's a service in a lot of cases. So make sure you value that. Make sure you're collaborating. So we've got so many different people in our industry, and Jill will talk a little bit about this tonight, but collaboration is important. And as I've already said, authenticity. Really build an authentic brand. So there's some key things that Kushla has taken away from the National Agritourism Forum. So I'm going to hand over now. I've talked long enough. I'm going to hand over now to Sean from Destination Central West, New South Wales. And Sean's going to share a little bit more about the learnings that they've had as a destination in agritourism development and opportunities.
Thanks very much, Linda. So Sean Halen's my name. I'm the General Manager of Destination Central West. To give you a bit of a very brief background on who we are, we're a regional tourism organisation. I'm located in Orange. If you're familiar with New South Wales, Orange is quite a large agritourism area. We've got strong food and wine, particularly in the Orange region, but also further out around our whole region from Lithgow across to the Lachlan Shire. I guess, so from our perspective, we work very closely with local government, with councils, and I think that's important to ensure that if you are going into this journey, to have a look at the ecosystem, your councils, whether it's the planning team, whether it's the economic development manager, or whether it's the tourism manager or the visitor centre, are very useful resources for you. They're well connected into the tourism industry, they're well connected across their region as well, and provide you the opportunity to collaborate. Destination New South Wales, or your state tourism organisation, so in New South Wales, is Destination New South Wales, is another very valuable resource. I think I just saw Mel Orcroft come on. Hey, Mel, shout out to you. And of course, Tourism Australia as well, when you are looking to probably introduce international tourists to your farm. So I want to talk a little bit about the value and benefits of the tourism industry, and specifically agritourism for farmers. So just to crunch a few numbers for you, agritourism is a big industry, and the tourism industry, the visitor economy, is a big industry as well, and it's growing. $20.3 billion in 2024, and 14% of it accounts for 14% of tourism spend across Australia. 6% of trips taken in Australia involve some form of an agritourism experience or journey along the way. And in New South Wales, as I said, where I'm from, the tourism industry is a big industry. It's ranked 6 out of 9 key sectors in the state, and it's ahead of education, mining, and dare I say, agriculture, forestry, and fishing. And in the central west of New South Wales, as I said, it is a big opportunity for us. The tourism sector here is growing at an average rate of about 9% per annum. It provides about 7% of all jobs across the region, and there's over 2,000 tourism businesses across our region. There's a QR code down the bottom there, and I think there's a few of these scattered throughout the presentation. Encourage you to just click on those or scan those as you go through, and just have a look, and that'll take you to the Agritourism Statistics Report. So a little bit about why you might consider agritourism as a diversification opportunity for you. Income, jobs, and productivity is the top line. And I'll drill into each of those a little bit. So income, it's obviously a new revenue stream. We all know and we understand the seasonality challenges of agriculture, and then also natural disasters such as drought or floods or whatever it may be. And the time to start thinking about um, diversification is not when you're in the middle of a crisis, as I'm sure you'll agree, but in advance of that. So you've got the capacity and the scope to obviously introduce new revenue streams in advance of those potential impacts. So new income streams, as I said, diversify the income to spread the risk of your farm. Can obviously help with cash flow during those quieter periods or seasonal periods, which obviously you can't predict sometimes. And it can build a customer base for you, particularly if you're selling direct retail and direct access to your customers, as Linda was talking about earlier with that beef example. From a productivity perspective, I think it allows you to maximise what could potentially be maximise your assets and what could potentially be an unused part of the farm. I'm sure there's not too many unused parts of the farm, but it could be a disused building. It could be an old shearing shed. You're no longer into wool sheep, for example. And how might you be able to consider converting that into something that could generate revenue for you without necessarily having to build a new or purpose-built building? And jobs. Jobs is obviously the biggest one. At the end of the day, it enables a whole stack of opportunities, whether it's the potentially the non-working spouse on the farm who might be generating off-farm income to generate off-farm income on farm. That's not necessarily related directly to the agricultural produce of that farm. It could be adult children returning to the farm who might have been living in the city for a few years and they're cashed up and they want to invest and take the farm on a new direction potentially. Whilst the traditional farming practices are obviously being undergoing as well. It can also be an opportunity for the kids on the farm to earn a little bit of pocket money, whether they're supplying firewood for a hip camper or something like that. Who knows? So there's a huge range of opportunity there in jobs and so forth. And the tourism industry, as I said earlier, was growing, and the prediction is that in 2035, tourism will contribute 1 in every 3 new jobs worldwide. So huge opportunity in the tourism sector as a growing sector, but also that flow-on benefit into your community. Supports the local community, whether you're buying supplies and then reselling them and using those supplies. If you're in accommodation, for example, it could be laundry, it could be repairs and maintenance, it could be local retail pieces that you might have in your accommodation or whatever else, and obviously the other sort of supplies and so forth that you're using. So that flow-on effect into the broader community is valuable as well. Next slide. Thanks, Linda. Ursula. So not only that, I mean, farming is an isolated activity, let's be honest. So agritourism provides social benefits as well as environmental benefits. So there's that social contact for farmers and obviously the families and so forth, which can reduce feelings of isolation. You've got visitors coming onto your farm, learning about them as much as they're learning about you is that social interaction, social contact. And I think in this day and age, we've all been through a period of lockdown in the last few years, which we probably don't want to relive again. But that social contact has become really important, and specifically for people working in isolated areas or regional communities. The pride, the immense pride that a producer takes from starting from a scratch, I suppose, and producing a product or their agricultural produce and being able to share that directly with a consumer and talk about the process that they've gone through, talk about their farming practices and what they're doing to help conservation efforts for the land. I think that's important as well. There's that fostering of appreciation for food production. I'm fortunate enough to live in a regional area. I grew up in the city. I also grew up in a time where probably there was a stronger connection to our farming community. I think kids these days probably don't have a really strong understanding of where food comes from. So to be able to educate the next generation of Australians how important agriculture is to Australia and to our economy, and obviously to their health and well-being overall, I think is a strong opportunity as well. Conservation efforts, as we mentioned before, being able to share those efforts, what you're doing to care for the land for future generations, what you've done in the past, and potentially what you've been able to change over time. and show as things like climate change, for example, become more prominent, and other things, and what you're doing for conserving the land, and inspire maybe the next generation of future farmers. Who knows? There might be a couple of city kids that decide they want to become farmers down the track. Next slide. Next slide. Thank you. So I think obviously with any business decision, you need to do a bit of a viability assessment before you jump in, as Linda said, and I'll talk a bit about some of the opportunities and where you might like to step into the agritourism sector. So first thing is, at the end of the day, we're all here to make money. Let's be honest. So can you make money? What's the cost benefit analysis to you? You've got to consider your time in that. Absolutely. And you've got to consider who's going to be talking to the visitors. Are they necessarily the right person to speak to the visitors, or is there someone else on the farm who might be a bit more visitor friendly potentially, and bring in the subject matter experts when you want to get into the tours or something like that? Is it the right fit for you? Access is also important. Ensuring that visitors can access not necessarily all of your farm, but those areas of the farm that you've decided are suitable for agritourism. Obviously, there's biosecurity issues and a whole stack of other things that you need to consider, and you don't need to open your farm up to everyone, or to the whole farm up to everyone. You need to just open up the areas where you can control and ensure that visitors can get a great experience, but also appreciate that you've got a sort of commercial enterprise going on as well. Just on the make money thing, and I skipped over it, but if I know Linda mentioned it earlier, there's things like farm produce experience, such as retail sales or tastings. Depending on what your farm offering is, obviously it can vary sort of from $20 to $80 a visitor as a guide. Other farm experiences, such as tours or activities, could range anywhere from $30 to a couple of $100 per visitor. And farm stay or accommodation can be as little as $30 for a hip camp, $150 for probably roofed accommodation, or up to $600 or more a night for luxury glamping style accommodation as well. So there's various levels where you might be able to access or enter into the agritourism sector. Seasonality, I talked about it before, but again, does it help you even out the inequity potentially of farming in the seasons across your region? And can it fill those gaps for you? Where are the peak times for you? If you're cropping, for example, sowing and harvesting, then probably the last thing you want to be doing is entertaining guests during those particular activities. So again, if you've got accommodation, you can close off your accommodation at certain times and then reopen it again when you're busier. And everyone's on board. Family buy-in is important. Dad's got the farm. Dad doesn't necessarily want to diversify. Next generation comes along with a great idea and perhaps a little bit of cash. But again, it's really important to ensure that every generation is on board. And I think maybe sometimes it's a toe in the water first. Let's go slow and steady and a low risk approach, and ensure that everyone is on board. And the time investment, as I mentioned earlier, can someone dedicate 10 to 20% of their time to deal with the visitors when they're arriving, help them check in, take them around the farm on those tours, host them on a tasting or whatever it might be? There is that time consideration, and who's going to do that and who is best placed to do that. Next slide, thanks. This one looks like a bit of a roadblock, but it is a process, and it does take time. And roadblocks is certainly not what we want to be throwing at you, but we want to sort of be a little bit realistic about the process. And in New South Wales, there's a number of planning changes that have occurred over the last couple of years to make agritourism development easier. I'm not familiar with the other states and what they're doing, but I think this journey or roadmap is something, and I think it's about, as I said earlier, starting small, testing something, going to the next level, testing it again, and so forth. And it really depends on what your agritourism product or experience might be as to whether you need to go down the planning pathway or not. And I think Jack's got some resources if she can't talk to those today, but certainly there's some resources available. So you can look at an entry level, foundation, your first 1 to 6 months, what you might be doing in that space. So you can assess your current farm assets. you can find out about local regulation and insurance needs. And your local council, through either the economic development team and the planning team, are very willing and open in most areas to have a conversation with you in advance. It's much better to get that relationship built early, not get too far down the path, because that can be expensive and it can be very frustrating for both parties. So find out what those local regulations are and how you might be able to actually develop a product or a program that fits within the guidelines, or whether you need to go down the development application path. As we said before, start small with existing infrastructure. You don't have to build the Taj Mahal to get into agritourism. You might have a disused building. You might have an area or farm, part of your farm that you can use quite easily. And test it. Test your product with family and friends. Host a locals night or something like that, and get the feedback and really identify what the visitor experience is that you're offering to people, and certainly working with the council's tourism managers, people like ourselves, Destination New South Wales, or your state tourism organisation. When you get down that path, can help you with those things. The development phase, 6 to 18 months in, I guess, developing your core experience offering. And again, that's where you're engaging with those people. What is it that visitors are looking for? You'll have a little bit of background. If you've been entertaining some visitors already, you'll get the feedback from them, talk to them. They'll be more than happy to give you some feedback, I'm sure. Develop really what is that core experience offering, and create your basic marketing channels, whether that's a website, social media, as I said before, connecting in with your local tourism organisation, council, whatever it might be. If you're looking at tours and some of those things, an opportunity that exists is to use booking platforms, and create your inventory. So you might say that you've got 2 tours a week, Tuesday and a Saturday at 11 o'clock. And so you can lock in the times where people can come and experience your product or experience. Obviously, for accommodation, that's a little bit different. But in that experience space, you can manage your inventory, you can manage your time, and maximise the opportunity by filling those tours, and establishing obviously the terms and conditions that kind of support that. And building a visitor feedback process, I think, is the other one. So reviews, surveys, talking to them, as I said earlier, getting them to give you as much feedback as possible about what they thought about the experience, how they might be able to be improved, etc. And then the third phase is really that 18 plus months going forward, where you might expand what you've been doing. You might take in a couple of other opportunities. You'll develop partnerships, hopefully, with other local tourism operators. And I know Jill's going to talk about some of those partnerships and collaborations that I know she's been working on in her journey. And you might be ready to scale up based on the ability to grow and the demand and the capacity. You might be surprised how popular opening up your farm is to visitors who are willing to come and pay for that opportunity to experience what you do on a daily basis and almost take for granted. Thank you very much. I think that's it for me. I think, Linda, back to you now, and happy to answer any questions in the chat as we go through. Thank you.
Thank you, Sean. Fabulous work. Now, just to wrap up from what Sean and I have shared with you this evening, please take a look at this QR code. This is a really good article that draws on a lot of what Sean and I have shared, and also what some of our other guest presenters will talk about this evening, but essentially takes you through these key things to consider in starting your agritourism journey. So everything from research to connecting with the industry, planning, securing insurance and approvals, and also building your skills, which is a really good segue to our next guest presenter, who is Jill from RedGround Australia, and she will share her story on her journey into agritourism. Over to
thanks,
you, Jill.
Linda. Thank you. And forgive me, my chat is ghosted out, so I'm not being rude. I just can't comment on anything in there. So my name is Jill O'Grady. I own and run a truffle farm in Oberon, New South Wales. We've been producing truffles for 4 years now. We grow 4 varieties of truffles, so we can hunt year round almost. A couple of months off for some maintenance in the orchard. So we've been looking at in those 4 years, I will share with you on the next slide one of the catalysts for moving into agritourism. But essentially, I started in the agritourism journey about 2 years ago. The very first, and into truffle hunts, I should explain. And the very first truffle hunt I ran, I sold one ticket. I had one person turn up. So we started from very small beginnings, but within that 2-year time frame, we now have future bookings already lined up. I now have next year, I have 24 bookings for groups from the UK coming. So it's been a really steep trajectory in terms of what we do here. We've developed the number of products that we have. We take aboard all the feedback. We ask everybody that comes here, what could we do better? What did you enjoy? What did, you know, what was missing? But essentially, and I share with you this next slide, you can see that in 2022, you see we had negative production. So as a truffle grower, when you have a very wet season, all your product will essentially just rot in the soil. So we learned very, very quickly that we needed to find an alternative income source. And Sean mentioned that the laws or the rules were relaxed for agritourism, and state government realised that farmers were not only getting hit by fire and flood, mice plagues, dust storms, you know, you name it, they were being smashed from every which direction. So they relaxed the rules to allow you to be able to welcome guests onto your farm and share with them what you do. So from my experience, I've had people come on the farm that have never, ever been on a farm. So it's fabulous. And they do ask a lot of questions. You do have to guide them. They do tend to, you know, go off in different directions, but all in all, they're on holiday. They're having a great time. So it's fun for us as well. So the income streams that we've developed through the agritourism, and clearly our main income must be primary production. So that's our fresh truffle. We're at commercial levels now so that we export overseas. And we also distribute to all the high-end restaurants through Sydney through distributors. So our business model is one to many. So we don't go and deliver our truffle all over the place. We just hand it over to a main distributor who then does their job through their networks. So that's our main form of income. The truffle farm experiences, we started with what our 3-hour truffle hunt, touch and taste experience. And what that does is it just gives everybody an immersive experience, everything they need to know about truffles. So from how we actually establish the orchard to what we do with farm biosecurity, how we train our dogs. Everyone's really keen to understand that, and they love meeting the dogs and patting them. And our dogs love the people as well. They're unexpected stars of the show. And just to teach them about how we find the truffles, how we harvest them. Everybody gets, I'd take out kneeling pads, everyone gets to dig up their own truffle, so they're getting their hands dirty. They're digging it like an archaeological dig. They've never done anything like that before. And then we go back and I built a bespoke truffle hunting lodge, so a purpose-built facility to welcome guests in, and it's done in country Australian industrial style, because we don't want to mimic the French truffle or the Italian truffle. This is Australian truffle, so visitors coming from overseas get an Australian experience. All the truffle tastings I make from scratch, so I can teach people how to actually cook with the truffle. Then we actually have a truffle grading workshop, so people learn what a really, really good truffle is, so that if they ever buy one into the future, they know what a good truffle is. They won't get buy something that's inferior, so they'll always have a wow experience with truffles. We do truffle panna cotta, truffle ice cream, and I got my my liquor license as well, so that we serve champagne with it, with all our tastings. So we make it a very luxe experience. So at the beginning, we welcomed all sorts of guests from all walks of life, but we tended to hone it down then into the luxe market. So the high-end free independent traveller, small intimate groups, so that it's a really luxurious experience, because the people that we receive on our farm, they don't care what it costs. They just want to experience something new. They don't want to stand and look at an icon anymore. They want to get in and feel something. You know, they really, really want to walk away. And the feedback that we get is that, wow, I had a great time, but I didn't realize how much I'd learned today. And sometimes it's hard to get rid of them. They just want to hang around, but that's fine too. But so the other thing we do is we have accommodation on farm. So that's another product. I work into 2 nights accommodation and a private truffle hunt. So they can do something really, really exclusive. So just they get the whole farm to themselves. Some tourists arrive saying, look, I'm traveling, I can't store or cook the truffle? Do you have any truffle oil? So that branched out into another income avenue for us. So I developed some recipes, so truffle aioli, mustards, all sorts of lovely balsamics. And I had a contract food manufacturer develop those for me so that they were safe and they were shelf stable. So I didn't have time to make them and I didn't have the expertise, but that was another avenue for another income stream for me. We now sell those through other retail outlets as well. So that puts our brand in the visitor information centre, in the local little gourmet shop, kitchen and store. So our brand is expanding through different little retail outlets. So that was that. Oh, and the other, sorry, I'll just go back. So the other farm experiences I'm developing now is a twilight truffle hunt in the summertime, so in the cool of the evening. Next, I want to experiment with cellar door style truffle tasting. So instead of going and having your wine tastings, you sit down and have truffle tastings. So that's more of a drop-in thing rather than a bookable experience. So, but you can be flexible. You know, if someone suggests something to you, give it a go. You know, it doesn't work, it doesn't matter. You know, it's still your farm. You're not going off to another property or anything. It's just trying different things and seeing what works for you. So my next slides are really just about what I did to get from that one ticket sale to international ready and receiving inbound tourists before they leave home. They're booking me well in advance now. So I first started with, this is a workshop that Sean organised through Destination Central West, the Agritourism Accelerator Program. Very beginnings, no one really knew what the new rules were around agritourism. So it was a workshop just to let us understand what could we do, what couldn't we do, what did we need to investigate, what did we need to learn. It was a great networking day as well, because I'd be sitting next to an accommodation provider and they'd say, oh, what do you do? And so we packaged up things. So, okay, they stay, rather than 2 nights in your accommodation, make it 3 nights and add in a truffle hunt. You sell my truffle hunt and I'll invoice you later, but he's packaged up now the whole stay longer. And that's all about the collaboration that we work with all the businesses in town, all the stores, all the accommodation providers, or the other tour operators. You know, you're working together, you don't isolate yourself and you share it. You know, Simone Loger's Essington Park out here, she does wonderful cooking workshops. We're collaborating on dinners together and getting people here and, you know, doing a hunt and taking it back to her place and cooking with the truffle. So don't feel that you're doing this on your own. You just need to talk to the other operators, join your local business and tourism association, find out what else is happening in the area. And we're now looking at trail programs, you know, so we have a weekend where people just follow a trail around from the, you know, Jacqueline's flower farm and whatever you want to do. Just pick and choose where you want to go. Jackie has also Jackie at Kensal Farm. She has Animal Farm. So we're always promoting each other because we're all very different. And the more people that hear about, the more things they can do here. They come and stay longer, spend more, and then they share it with everybody. Everyone's on social media and sharing all these lovely photos. The other thing I did was Service New South Wales state government offered free business advice for small businesses. Now, this was just about connecting with experts in their field where you had a gap. So I'd look at, get a business health check saying, where are the gaps in the business? My website, I created it. It was good, wasn't great. So I'd have a 1-hour webinar with an expert who would make me do the work, but teach me what I needed to do. So now, you know, I just go in the back end and update it. Whenever I need to add something new, I can just do it myself. I don't have to outsource it and wait for someone else to do it. Social and digital marketing. Again, I wasn't great at that. So I had 1-hour sessions with people that could help me understand how to extend my network and my social media presence. So that was really, really important. So it didn't cost me a cent, but it did take a bit of time to be able to get through all those webinars and teach myself. Destination New South Wales have been an absolutely fabulous supporter of my product and what we do here. They sponsored me to do a digital academy with Tourism Tribe. Highly recommend this organisation because they're focused on tourism operators. So they know where your challenges are. They know that you have to work on everything yourself. So this was done, I did this 2 years ago. I didn't know what ChatGPT was back then. I didn't know what Canva was, but these are tools I use every single day now as a you know, individual digital operator. I learned how to use CapCut, which is splicing my videos together for social media. I now know how to use Google Analytics 4. What are people searching for? What are those key terms? Where are the hits? Which pages are people visiting, and how long are they staying for? I learned how to develop a lead magnet, so my pop-up. So if you go onto my website, I leave it for a little while because I don't particularly like pop-ups. So after a little while, it says, if you'd like to subscribe to download the truffle-inspired recipe ebook, and that just pops them in through. Zapier is another system that grabs their details and puts it into MailerLite, which is then my email subscription. So I didn't know how this all fitted together, but this digital academy was absolutely amazing in helping me get up to speed with all of this. Resdi is my online booking system, so it keeps all my manifests. It keeps me on track with all that's happening, so nothing slips through the cracks, and they can capture special dietary requirements, their contact details. I have automatic follow-up emails. They're saying, yep, a truffle hunt's happening next week. Make sure you bring warm clothes. It's going to be cold. So it's all automated for me, so I don't have to worry about, oh, I've forgotten to do something. Again, Destination New South Wales helped me to become international ready. A number of workshops, a lot of coaching in terms of developing my trade pack. So my product is a commissionable product. So I built in a commission so other people can use their networks to sell my product. So I'm using their marketing expertise and contacts and distribution. So I had to develop my fact sheets. What did the tour include? I had to develop what my rate sheet were, what commission would be payable to them, what were the starting times, finishing times, minimum numbers, maximum numbers, all those sorts of little details, and also my trading terms. So I had to think clearly, saying, when do I want to be paid, all these sorts of things. So everybody was on the same page. I did a small showcase at the Rocks where we met about 21 online tour agencies and inbound tour operators and speed dating. That started the ball rolling to learn how to sell my product to that particular business network. And Destination New South Wales also helped me with Families, which is where they bring people to your property to experience what you have to offer. So they invited influencers from China that had 5 million followers. You can't buy that sort of exposure. An influencer from India came as well. We've had influencers from Australia because you also want to tap into the local market. So that's I think it's maybe Miller helped me here, but first product program might include that link, Linda, if you don't mind, with for the people, because that's really, really fabulous workshop and program to go through as well.
New product workshop, Jill. New product
Thank
workshop.
You. Thanks, Sean. Another course I did was Earthcheck Sustainability. Tourists now want to go somewhere and know they're not leaving a carbon footprint. They want to know that it's environmentally sustainable what they're doing. So this course helped me to analyze everything I do in my business to see where I could improve upon. So from the the disposable things I was using, I now have a gravity-fed irrigation system. So my irrigation system does not use any power. Constantly looking at different things on how to improve. So the visitors, when they come, they ask questions. They said, how do you do this? How do you do that? And if you can hand on heart say, well, I use no power in doing this, or I put back all our truffle waste back into the soil. There's nothing wasted on our farm whatsoever. It's a circular environment. They love to hear that. They think that's fabulous because they want to live sustainably, and they want to know that where they're coming to is also considering exactly the same things. I then went on to do the National Eco-Tourism certification. We have a critically endangered ecological community here, and we try to explain to people how we're restoring that as well. So it's another story, like Linda was saying, that you've got to be a storyteller so that it's not just showing them a product, it's actually going behind the scenes and saying, hey, did you realize that over here, this is what's happening on our farm here? And it just opens up their eyes and know that it's not just producing something and selling something. Farming is, you're the caretaker of the land, and you want to leave it in a better state than when you found it. The Going Global Export Program is another thing we're touching on. So the truffle infused product line, we're scaling up for export. So we already export the fresh truffle, but we're trying to scale up and export this truffle infused product range. So that will then promote our brand overseas, and also the product line hopefully will be just showcase what RedGround is all about. It's all about that brand. Every time you do something, put your brand on it. Make sure that it's front and center. Where you have your tourists come, make sure your name is on the side of the building or on somewhere where they take a photo. So every time they post something, it's verity through exposure. It's just on and on and on. So in 2 years, people know what RedGround is in Sydney. And we're 2.5 hours of a small farm. Kujla, I'll just, we're 60 acres, not 20, just in case some people were thinking we're a bit smaller, but we're 60. So yeah, the Going Global Export program is about, going overseas, promoting our product, and then having people come back onto farm to experience where their product comes from. Earlier this year, Destination New South Wales invited me to go along to the Australian Tourism Exchange. I had 187 speed dates over 4 days. It's a bit of a blur now, I got to say. I don't really remember much, but the following week, I secured those 24 group bookings from the UK. They just love the product. It was something unique, but don't feel afraid that you can't do something like that with accommodation, because they're still looking for new things. In the program, it highlighted who was a new seller, who was a new buyer, and those were the people that were coming here saying, "You're new. I want to learn about what you're doing, because I've met everybody here before and I'm catching up with them and touching base again, but I want to find out what's new in the area." And one of the main questions they were asking me was saying, "Okay, well, I come to Oberon. What else can I do there?" So I had a separate stack of pictures and saying, "Well, let me show you." I had a beautiful picture of the golf course right on Lake Oberon, beautiful picture of Mayfield Gardens, Essington Park, Kensal Farm. I had all these other shots, and all these inbound tour operators are going, who hasn't told me about Oberon before? So now they're building whole itineraries to come here, because they know they can do lots more things. They don't have just to drop in to see me and then go 2.5 hours somewhere else. They can do a number of things, and so we're gathering people to stay here. Let's see what's next. I'll come to them in my slides, but I'm more than happy if people want to reach out and ask questions. I don't know everything, but if you're looking to get into it and start with it, I know there's a lot more experienced operators than me out there, but if you're more than welcome to contact me. There's my website, my email's on the website, and just shoot me an email, or my phone number's there too. Give me a call.
Wow. Awesome, Jill. Look, I won't hold us up for too long because we're running out of time, but I just have to say, what we love about what Jill shares with us is you can see that tourism is a different industry. Like, it's pushing yourself out of your comfort zone and going to those networking events, going and learning and building those skills. And I think the other thing that you've really highlighted, Jill, is that the tourism industry is really supportive. And as you can see, I mean, Jill's obviously in New South Wales, but for any state and territory across the country, we have such a supportive industry. There are so many resources and support networks out there for you to tap into, just like Jill has, to ensure success of your agritourism development. Thank you so much, Jill. You've got so much to share, and you just jammed so much into a short period of time, so I really appreciate that. Now we're going to hand over to Jacqueline. Jacqueline is from Burns Planning and Development, also an agritourism operator. And I know Jacqueline's been busily in the chat. So I would love to invite Jacqueline. Jacqueline's had a couple of tech issues. So Jacqueline, will give this a try. If something goes wrong, we can adapt. So never fear. Over to you.
Thank you. Sorry, Telstra issues today. So I'm a consultant town planner. I am based in New South Wales for those people that are watching from other states. So the information that I'm going to give you tonight is heavily based on the New South Wales planning system. I have had a quick look. There are equivalent opportunities in other states when it comes to development without consent and complying development and those sorts of things. So please speak to your local council and try and find out what the best fit is for you. So I specialise in planning, I assist people in lodging their applications to council. I also am a wife of a farmer. We have a 300-acre farm here in the Central West, not far from Jill. And as part of that, I launched this spring my own agricultural tourism project. I have a flower farm, so that's been interesting for me, sort of navigating the planning system for my own project. And I put my, like Sean said, put my toe in the water. I'm starting small. I'm looking at what the interest is in what I'm doing and then where I can go from there. Next slide, please. So what is a planning consultant? They're essentially just like me, they're ex-council staff that now operate privately. And we just assist people, businesses, homeowners, developers in lodging applications to council for various land uses. But what we are especially is we're interpreters. So we can interpret council's requirements and put them back to council in a format that they'll accept. So we can talk to you about what's required from the planning system and how we can obtain that information. And using us as a mediator, essentially, between what you're looking to do and the development you want to do on your property and what council's expectations are. So essentially all council wants to do is tick boxes. They want to tick various boxes to demonstrate that, you know, issues or compliance has been achieved or that environmental outcomes have been achieved. So we facilitate that to occur. Yep. Why do I need a town planning consultant? You don't need to employ us. We're not compulsory, but we're a lot like accountants. So you can do your own tax return. But when you have, you know, your BAS and your GST to report, sometimes it's better to get the accountant to do that for you. The same with a planning consultant. When things are starting to get complex, it's better off to hire someone that can mediate, like I said, between you and council. Council will often give you a tip. They'll often say or suggest that you seek the services of a planning consultant. And what they're essentially saying to you is that the development that you're looking to undertake is fairly complex and you need to reach out to a specialist, and that's what we do. So essentially what we can do to assist you is we can sit down with you at your dining room table and we can talk about what you want to achieve, what your outcomes are, what your goals are, what your budget is, and we can sort of measure up what can be done within the planning system to give you a start in the business, depending on your budget, or to step right into the development that you're looking to do, and give you basically a risk assessment. You know, these are the constraints that you have on your property. These are the requirements that need to be met by council, and we can help you facilitate that. We also have connections with other consultants. As a town planner, I only want to engage other consultants, such as acoustic consultants or engineers that I know that are going to provide value for money. So we have those connections in our local community, and these are people that have worked with your council before, that understand what the council's looking for, and that's invaluable because not all consultants are the same. You know, there's some good ones out there and there's some poor ones out there. So that's probably a big plus for a planning consultant. We can also look at alternatives. So maybe you want a wedding venue or event venue, as you know, under agricultural tourism, and we can look at, well, what are the options in order to achieve that. Next slide. So this is the pathway in New South Wales. So there's essentially three main options. The easiest option to navigate, and is what I've used for my flower farm, is exempt development. And there are similar provisions in other states where you can do minor work with minimal environmental impact, often without council's consent, and that's what I have done. for other development in New South Wales, there's the complying development provisions, and I know that exists in other states as well. And basically that's a fast track approval where it lets you do slightly larger development, still with a minimal environmental impact. And then of course there's the DA, which everyone tries to avoid. I'm not sure why, because it is a frustrating process, the DA process. I won't beat around the bush with that. But it is the most flexible option for you. If you want to develop a proposal and you want to have flexible opening hours, or you want flexibility with numbers, the CDC or the fast track approval provisions will not assist you. You really need to go down that DA path, and that's where the DA is a good option. Next slide. Yeah, so I get asked this all the time. So if council knows all the rules, why don't they just help me? Why don't they tell me who to engage? Why don't they you know, help me out? Because this is a complex process. And the reason is there's a massive conflict of interest. I often, depends on the council, but some councils will actually give you a handout of local consultants that can assist you, such as town planning consultants. Some councils won't do that. I've had clients go to council and ask, who is the town planning consultant who lodges the majority of the applications to council? And that's a good question to ask if they won't give you any recommendations, because then you'll know who's out there in your local area or in the wider area that has expertise in dealing with that council, and then you can go to them and start asking questions. I'm not suggesting that you need to go to council, not go to council, sorry. I think you still should approach the council and have a pre-DA meeting. But what I want you to do is be prepared, have a think about what your development is. How many people do you want to have site? What's your ultimate goal? Sit down and jot that information down on paper, and then approach council so they can give you an informed response. It's no good to go to council and just have an airy-fairy concept of what you'd like to achieve. Yeah, have some firm facts in front of you about what you're planning to do, and then council can respond. And you might be daunted with the response council provides back to you, but that's when you can reach out to a planning consultant and find out, you know, what does this really mean? What do I need to do? So weddings, sharing sheds and wishful thinking. I constantly get requests from people who have shearing sheds or vacant outbuildings and want to turn them into events, you know, event centres. And that is a provision that is available under the agricultural tourism provisions in New South Wales. And I get it, because weddings are very profitable and there's very limited opportunities for people in the rural zone or living on the land to make a commercial amount of money off their property. So they look at weddings as an option, but they are the most complex type of development that you can undertake on your property. You know, you will need a range of consultants to give you reports on wastewater, bushfire safety, noise, water quality, disabled access, building code compliance, you know, traffic and parking, waste management, and the list goes on. And all those subheadings have, you know, dollar signs next to them. So what we can do as planning consultants, like I said, we can come and we can sit at your dining room table and we can look at, you know, do you have the budget for this? Is this the best option to convert your sharing shed into an event space? Maybe we should dip our toe in the water and start small. What can we do now, maybe under the provisions of exempt development, that doesn't require a huge financial obligation from you, and that you can start and see whether you really want to have, you know, people on your property. You know, there's micro weddings and there's garden weddings, and there's a lot of options that you can look at that don't require the big investment up front. So what I want you to take away, and I've sort of made a really quick summary of my talk because I know we're running out of time, but what I really want you to take away from this is avoiding council isn't the shortcut it seems. You know, I know there's that saying out there that it's easier to seek forgiveness later. It's not. It's not now. It used to be, I think, maybe once, but with the building code compliance and issues associated with that, it really pays you to talk to council. I know people want to avoid council at all costs. And if you want to, then your option is a town planning consultant, but do the right thing, ask the right questions, protect yourself, and you'll be better off for it in the long run. Thank you.
So great, Jacqueline. Thank you so much. And yes, you did speed through that and we really appreciate it. So thank you so much for giving that insight to everybody. Kushla's just put Jacqueline's website, I believe, into the chat box or a form of contact. So please reach out to Jacqueline. I think some really common sense advice there. So thank you, Jacqueline. I'm going to stop sharing now and I'll hand over to Kate. So we've now got Kate from Nutrien Ag that will give us some insights into insurance considerations for agritourism.
Thank you. Yes, I threw a spanner in the works when it came to presenting slides, so apologies, everyone. Hopefully you'll be able to see that in a second.
Perfect.
We're good? Excellent.
Yep.
Yeah, I did drop a short intro into the chat, but my name's Kate Hayden and I'm the East Region Insurance Manager for Nutrien Ag Solutions. I know that insurance can be seen as a bit of a dry old topic, but trust me when I say that it is so important, particularly when we're talking about things like agritourism, farming generally. We're talking about protecting your livelihood, so there's not much that's more important than that. I do have to add a little disclaimer. Please just remember that anything discussed tonight is general advice only and doesn't take into account anyone's specific circumstances. So for me, East Region means that my team look after insurance from the top of Queensland to the bottom of Tasmania. So we look after a vast region. And insurance is one of the many activities that Nutrien Ag Solutions provides to all of our customers. But from an insurance perspective, what it means is that our brokers are brokers. They're not tied to any particular insurer, which means that we operate with our clients' best interests at heart, not the insurer's best interest, which is a really important distinction, and I'll touch on that again in a moment. Agritourism is rapidly growing. We've heard some amazing stories tonight about how it's rapidly growing. And it does offer farmers a unique income stream and visitors a unique experience. How cool was the truffle thing? But with opportunity comes risk, and that's really clear. You know, if we're inviting people onto our farm, there is a good chance that at some point something might go awry. So that's where insurance plays a really vital role. So we'll just talk a little bit about what may fit in with existing farm insurance and what might not, and what you might be able to do to sort of bridge that gap. If I can change slides, there we go. So if you're planning to expand into agritourism, either by opening your farm up to visitors or adding other income streams like the Airbnb or weddings, I was glad to hear Jacqueline say that's the most complicated path you can go down, because it certainly is from an insurance perspective as well. But it's essential to understand how that fits in with your insurance. It might sound super simplistic, that phrase that I've got up there on the screen, but you need to make sure your insurance actually protects you and what you are doing. That's the most important thing, bar none. It needs to be set up to respond to the types of circumstances that you might actually encounter on your farm or as part of your agritourism. A cookie cutter solution, I'll guarantee you, usually won't respond. So if your policy isn't constructed to respond to the types of claims that your specific circumstances might see come about, then your insurance policy isn't worth the money that you're paying for it. When we're talking about agritourism, the part of the insurance policy that is the pivotal part is the public liability insurance. At a high level, your public liability insurance is going to protect you from claims against when visitors come out. There might be accidents, property damage, injury. But one of the things people don't often think about is it's really important to also remember that there may not actually be an accident, damage or injury, but your visitor can claim that there has been, and you still need to defend that claim. And public liability can help in that process as well. There are things to consider when it comes to rural insurance. Standard farm insurance policies are designed to cover traditional farming. So beef, cattle, sheep, wool, cropping, mixed farming, they're not necessarily designed and set up to cover agritourism. So it is really, really important that you have a conversation with your insurance broker, and one of the key takeaways will be disclosure is the key. Disclose what you're actually doing. Don't try and beat around the bush. Don't make it into something it's not, because come claim time, that will have an adverse effect on you. And what you want is for your claim to be covered and for you to be paid. As I said, cookie cutter solutions are not what you need. Agritourism is way too diverse to suit a cookie cutter solution. And by that, I'm talking about, and it's a generalisation, but I'm talking about direct insurance offerings when it comes to rural. Each farm's unique. Australia is vast, it's wide, many different geographic considerations, and that sort of one-size standardised insurance just won't address all of the factors that agritourism needs addressed. Those types of policies are generic and they're designed to fit an average, and there's certainly a place for them, but agritourism isn't it. Agritourism needs a customised policy, one that takes into account the specific circumstances of what you're doing. Probably the next question is, how do insurers and underwriters find out what I'm doing? They ask questions, and they can ask a lot of questions. It's a really common misconception that lots of questions from insurers and underwriters equals higher premium. It's actually the exact opposite. If an insurer or underwriter doesn't ask questions, they have to assume worst case scenario. So, you know, insurers and underwriters have seen lots and lots of really bad examples of what they do, and that's the picture that they're going to have in their head of your risk unless they understand better. Photos are also a really, really great tool. Picture tells 1,000 words, and we routinely supply insurers and underwriters with photos, which is a really great way of having them understand what you do. There's a lot of questions, as I said, and some of the common ones that they'll ask are around turnover. Turnover and the number of guests sort of go hand in hand. They're prime rating factors when it comes to public liability insurance. But they'll want to know things like, what are the guests actually doing on the farm? Generally, farm insurance will exclude guest involvement in farm activities. So that's a really, really important one. Some insurers will extend to cover, other insurers won't, and there needs to be standalone options. Food and alcohol provision. Obviously, alcohol is seen as a pretty high-risk thing in insurance. It's not to say that it can't be covered, but there needs to be some really specific questions about that. And food preparation is another big one. If that's something that's being done as part of the agritourism, obviously there's risk there. Hosting of events, they'll want to know how often, is it ad hoc? Are we doing weddings monthly? What does that sort of look like? Numbers of people that might be coming onto your property, that type of thing. They'll often want a questionnaire or a proposal filled out. They can be quite comprehensive, but rather than looking at that as a chore, please look at it as an opportunity to really paint that clear picture for the underwriter so that you get the cover that you need, and you're not actually being charged for insurance where the underwriter thinks that your agritourism operation is of a lesser quality. I'll speed through this one, being mindful of time, but different insurers have got different risk appetites. It probably sounds pretty obvious, but it's really important to make sure that the insurer aligns with the specific business model that you have. This slide shows 3 common farm insurers or rural insurers that we use. And if we look across, you know, even just the turnover threshold, insurer A will cap agritourism at a maximum of $50,000 income to you. Insurer C says that as long as it's less than 10% of your overall farming income, then that's okay. And as you can imagine, they might be vastly different numbers. So it's important to dive into the detail, or get your broker to dive into the detail. accommodation and building types, it is routine that where there is guest accommodation, insurers will require that there is some sort of council approval. So that one is pretty constant across all insurers. And then looking at the agritourism activities, pardon me, most insurers will extend cover for some low risk activities, but what they consider to be low risk activities is going to vary from insurer to insurer. So I guess the overall point is there's lots of other options available, but it does get quite complex. And again, it's another reason that it's really, really important to have those conversations with your insurance broker and make sure you're being really clear and really transparent about what you're doing. And if you currently have an insurance broker, they should be coming out to your farm and having these conversations at least once a year. And if they're not, please ask them why. Minimising risk, pretty obvious one. As I said, sale of alcohol. It sounds like I'm really hating on alcohol. It's not about that. It's where alcohol is a standalone thing that can be seen as pretty risky. But it's just about the insurers understanding exactly what's happening, exactly what sort of safety measures you have around there. Public liability insurance should be part of your risk management strategy. But we'd also really recommend that you've got a written risk management plan. That's a really great starting point. And if you have never done a written risk management plan, there are plenty of templates out there. I'm sure there's plenty online, but there's also a lot of insurers are more than happy to provide those, and your broker can help you work through those. So that's another thing that I encourage you to ask your broker about. The key takeaways are make sure your cover fits your vision. I think that's been a pretty constant theme through everyone that's sort of presented tonight, and insurance is no different. As I said, if the insurance isn't going to respond to your particular circumstances, then it's not worth the money that you're paying for it. Disclosure is key. Be really clear, be really transparent about what you're doing. Cookie cutter insurance solutions won't protect you when it comes to agritourism. But there are other options and there are other solutions. Make sure your insurance broker is actually an insurance broker and not tied to an insurer, so that they can actually go out and find the best solution for you across any number of insurers and underwriters. In terms of us and getting in touch with one of our brokers, this was just to give a quick snapshot to show that we are pretty much everywhere. And I'll drop the link in the chat for anyone that would like to make contact with any of our insurance brokers. There's a couple of ways you can do it. You can click on the link, go through and request a quote, or you can go and search for a broker as well. But also I'm happy to answer any other questions that anyone may have. Thank you.
Fabulous. Thank you, Kate. I think one of the biggest takeaways for me listening to that is particularly that slide where you showed those different scenarios. And we often hear from farmers where they'll say, oh, we can't get insurance or nobody will insure us. It's so interesting that you can go to 3 different insurers and that's completely different. And I think a key takeaway for people is don't kind of just take that initial advice. Really, like, as you said, have a broker or get a few different scenarios and do those comparisons and find what's going to work for you. Like you said, find something to match the vision.
Absolutely.
Now, I'm just going to share back. I've just got one little wrap up slide because it's got a couple of QR codes. This is death by QR codes tonight, isn't it? Look out. Sorry about that. The good old COVID, look at what it left us. Look, thank you all so much for joining us. I appreciate that we have gone a little bit over time, but I think that's really valuable information. I guess what we want you to think about, having heard everything that has been shared with you this evening, is it's now over to you to take this information back to your farm. And it's like you've got to do your own cost benefit analysis. So it's the benefit, as Sean and I have shared with you, we are major advocates for tourism. We love this industry. We see great opportunity in agritourism, as do, our various government agencies. It's a very exciting and really rewarding industry to be in. So there's great opportunity. But as you can also see, there's some very serious considerations that you need to take on board to make sure that you make the right decisions for your farm. So as we've heard, from a planning and an insurance perspective, and especially listening to Jill's story in terms of really invest the time and energy into skill development and embracing the opportunities that exist within the tourism industry, and know your customer. So I thank you all again for joining us this evening on the webinar. The QR codes on the screen right now will take you to a couple of extra resources that will direct you. The first one is the Agritourism Support State by State. So Kushla has compiled that, and it goes through state by state and gives you some insights into where you can tap into further resources relevant to your state. The other one that you can see is an agritourism Facebook group that is essentially a community of people that are interested in agritourism, and you can jump into that and ask further questions, share information, and learn from others as well. So jump into those. Thank you all so much. We'll sign off for tonight. Really appreciate you joining this evening, and congratulations to all of our great presenters. Thank you.